It's kind of interesting that as a podcaster that talks about love, sex, and relationships, I actually don't talk all that much about dating or the dynamics of dating. I don't know. Maybe it is actually true. Maybe I'm not thinking that far back, or maybe I'm just using this as a way to sort of tease that the topic is going to be around dating and, people who are dating, even though you've probably read the title. But anyways, I'm going to get into that later on. But first, I want us to talk about Shakira and Strawberry Jam. I don't know, maybe if you haven't heard this story, then probably you've been living under a rock. But for those of us that may not know about it, Shakira busted PK cheating using Strawberry Jam. Apparently the whole story was that she had been traveling and she'd come back and she'd find that her Strawberry Jam was used, and PK absolutely hates the Strawberry Jam and he never used to use it. So that kind of raised questions. And to kind of think about that story, it turned into a whole bunch of memes, babes all about, now I'm gonna start measuring shit, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, as far as explanations go, if PK admitted to a cheating scandal just because of Jam, dude has to be one of the dumbest motherfuckers I've ever heard of in history. Most niggas usually defend that shit. You can literally come up with an excuse about how your Strawberry Jam was used very, very easily. It's not that it's that hard. And as a result, I don't even think that whatever it is that Shakira found out was even all that bad. I feel like that could have been worse, that could have been underlying, because I can think of two other reasons that justify the jam being used besides him banging another woman in the house. And first one is that the boys were home. They decided to watch a game, or they were playing FIFA, or they were just chilling with the boys, and they came through and they decided to make sandwiches for themselves, and one of them decided to use up the jam. Simple. It's one of those things you can just say, my homies were doing it. And it's probably the easiest go-to response to who the hell's been using up my jam, have you been fucking another woman? The other reason, which sounds a little bit far-fetched but could actually be true, is he could have been banging a dude.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
Alright, just think about it for a second. I know it sounds very far-fetched, but let me just try and bring you to my thought process for a little bit. Now, first of all, it was jam. If Shorty discovered that the jam has been getting used up and decided to jump to the whole cheating allegation, first of all, wouldn't it be easier to just accept that it's a babe that you were cheating on your wife with? Because that one's a little bit more conventional. People have heard about it. They're like, he's a superstar footballer, blah, blah, blah. And they'd probably let it pass. But imagine if he was cheating on his wife with a dude. There's a lot of public shaming and shunning and everything. So instead of defending the fact that, my jam has been consumed because you were fucking another woman, he might as well just let that one slide because it's easier, at least in terms of public perception. Right? And I'm not gonna lie, it's not like I actually thought this part through. For me, the thing that just clicked in my head was that episode on the Boondocks season 3, episode 9. It's called A Date with a Booty Warrior, where the inmate talks about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and he actually ended up saying this.
Now, I like to put the jelly inside my ass. Then put some of this peanut butter on top of it. I call it a peanut butter jelly and sandwich. But Tom here will be calling it lunch.
Now, using both these reasons to kind of bring up the whole gay thing, are you saying that my idea is very far-fetched? Don't you think it might actually be a possibility though? You know what? I'm actually gonna leave you with that as food for thought so that you can ponder over it, as I start this podcast in a fashion that I probably should have started it in, which is... Welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who may occasionally use Strawberry Jam, just in case someone accuses me of cheating. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show where I get to question someone's liking of jam and whether there's more to it. I get to talk about people and their ages in dating. Sometimes people get pissed, but I usually like to come through with that conclusion. Now, if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it, if you feel like saying hi, or if you just want to get in touch with me via socials, then the place to do it at is at Breaktime on Westside on Facebook or on IG, depending on which app you're using. On Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. And if you do end up forgetting which socials you can hit me up on, then the links are in the description. And if you are liking what you're listening to, then a nice rating and or review on whichever app you're using would be highly appreciated. Now, there's definitely quite a bit to be spoken about today, and to be very honest, before I get into the main topic of today, I was actually having a bit of a dispute on what to talk about, because there's a cop story of a female cop in the US of A who was busy having a train run on her by her fellow co-workers, and I have a Shakira story, not Shakira, which involves her and not finding someone to date. Now, because I am in Kenya and most of the listenership of this podcast is in Kenya, unfortunately I can't do the police cop story. But at least I can say that in that entire story, if you do find it, she clearly gave her service to the people and her cervix to her colleagues. Now, all that said and done, let's move on to this Shakira story. So, the socialite and self-acclaimed queen of the streets known as Shakira came out recently to state that she was having troubles finding a guy. Now, there was an article that was done on this, and it apparently claims that she wrote on her stories that she was unable to find a man, so I'm just gonna read it real quick. It says, and I quote, "Kenyan socialite Shakira appears to be struggling to find herself a man. In a post on her Instagram stories, the bold socialite shared her disappointment in bagging a suitable suitor to cuff her, questioning whether or not people in her followers list want her. She says, and I quote, "So out of all of my goddamn followers, no one wants to enter into a serious relationship with me? Was I meant to be in the streets for life?" End quote. However, in an interesting turn of events, singer B Classic did not leave such an opportunity to chance, as he showed his interest in the socialite after learning that she was desperate. He, however, took it upon himself to lay bare his conditions for pursuing and taking Shakira, saying that he'd be willing to take her under his wing if she was willing to change her socialite status and way of living. He says, and I quote, Shakira, I have seen you want to leave the streets. See, the thing is, I am also in the market and I can take you in and give you a good life. But are you willing to change? I'll cater for everything as long as I see you becoming a church girl." Singer Naughty Flo also expressed her interest in the socialite, captioning the post on social media with, "I'm here." In November 2022, Shakira confessed that she would never date a Kenyan man and instead prefers Nigerian men out of their generous nature. The self-proclaimed queen of the streets made a comeback on social media mid-2022 after missing in action for months. And I'll end the story there. Now, the thing is, it's not like it's particularly new for a socialite or a person from the quote-unquote streets coming out and saying that they want to get into some sort of a serious relationship. The only thing is, it's pretty interesting the way there's always going to be a Captain Save-A-Ho somewhere. Like, we can have a shortage of Batman because we don't have that many billionaires on the planet, but there's always gonna be Captain Save-A-Ho somewhere. And the thing is, I'm not clowning on the guy because he wants her to reform or he believes that he can change her. The only thing is, like, this is a babe that not too long ago, I think it was like 3, maybe 4 months ago, came out to state that she wouldn't date Kenyan guys because she herself is not Kenyan and she shouldn't, take a shot with Kenyan guys. Of which, at the end of the day, like, hell, even I can shoot my shot at her. I'm not entirely Kenyan. Like, I'm partially Kenyan, so, I can wave the whole flag of not being fully Kenyan and probably use it to my benefit, even though my DM will largely go unanswered. But the thing is, when you look at the kind of person that you're trying to get into some sort of a relationship with, in a lot of cases for us guys, we tend to look at a babe's past. Now, if you've come out on the internet and you've stated a bunch of high-level celebrities, or should I say sports athletes such as the Wanyama brothers, that you've supposedly banged, as well as others, and your body count is super high and everything, depending on what high is for some people, like, it becomes a little bit hard for you to kind of claim the whole relationship status. Like, if you look at the likes of the socialites that came before her, Vera and Huda, like, they never spoke about their body counts. Yes, people knew that they were glorified hoes to a certain extent, but they never talked about their body counts. They never spoke about how they banged all of these random dudes, even though we knew that they used to bang upper class niggas. And at the end of the day, they could get into relationships. Hell, Vera's already married and she has a kid, and I think a second one on the way and some shit, because at the end of the day, they never came out to state that they were a hoe. And at the end of the day, even though there was going to be a Captain Save-A-Ho somewhere that decides that they want to be with this babe and the babe is supposedly changed and reformed and shit, the guy at least would have some sort of ego because this is a babe that a bunch of niggas want but can't get. Now, in this babe's case, in Shakila's case, like, even though you're with her, like, everyone knows that there's a bunch of niggas that want her but can't get, but at the end of the day, everyone believes that some guy with a lot more money can just come and sweep her off her feet and she'll pretty much give up the goods. So in other words, it's community pussy, but elite community pussy. You get me? So all in all, I do kind of feel sorry for her because I think a lot of people will be attracted to her but won't really value her as a woman of sorts. But all in all, I wish her all the best, and I will leave it at that, and I will move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, sometime last week, while I was busy just scrolling through WhatsApp, there was a link to an article that was posted up on some group. And it read, and I quote, "The rise of mumamas, why older women are dating younger men." Now, I found this article to be particularly interesting because it was talking about, the idea of cougars and older women dating younger guys. And some guy was asking me to give a bunch of breakdowns and give a solution, blah, blah, blah. And I did promise I was gonna do it on this episode, but either way, I figured it is something that should be spoken about, especially considering that there is an entire quote-unquote manosphere or red pill of dudes that always talk about going for a younger, purer, more youthful babe, blah blah blah. She has to be between the age of 19 and 25 or some shit. And frankly, I feel like that in and of itself isn't entirely correct. So I did actually end up reading the entire article and I found it particularly interesting, mostly because the interesting thing that the writer did was that she sort of went and looked for the different reasons why a lot of these older women will choose to date younger guys, and each of those reasons had a particular story behind it. Now I'm gonna read as many bits of the entire article for you as I can, but if you'd like to read the entire thing, I've posted the link to the article itself in the description, and I will just read the parts that are the most important. So the first reason is, I am attracted to his sexual stamina. This is from a woman called Marian Jerry, who's a bank director, early 40s, and she says, and I quote, "I don't regret meeting my toy boy, who is in his late 20s 5 years ago at a friend's party. Mine was love at first sight. I was captured by his smile and physical appearance, and I remember telling my girlfriends that I wouldn't mind getting to know the boy. Little did I know this would lead to friendship and with time grow to deep love. Surprisingly, he resembles my son's complexion and character, and I think this unconsciously attracted me to him. I know my cheating hurts, but my husband is always busy with work and he has no time for me. I understand that my boyfriend would want to settle in marriage, and I am okay with that, but we have agreed that the relationship will still continue. The man is in college pursuing an engineering course, and I pay his fees and meet his bills. I bought him a car recently on his birthday and he was so happy. I will not leave my husband, but it's clear in mind that I am not ready to drop the affair because this man gives me sex which I have been denied at home." End quote. Now, the second reason, because I just want to read the reasons and I can break it down from my end, is I want to feel youthful. Now, this is a woman called Regina who's in her early 50s and is a businesswoman. And she says, and I quote, "I cherish the 30 years of marriage we have had together with my husband in his 50s and our 2 children between 20 and 25. I met my husband in church and he has fully demonstrated his loyalty in how he takes care of our children as a father. I regret cheating on him and sometimes it pains me that I broke our marriage vows, but I have a strong urge to feel youthful and I just can't let it go. I met my lover in his late 20s 2 years ago in a music concert I had attended. I love music and I have invested in the entertainment business, and hence I can spot good talent from afar. On that day, he was performing in the concert and I was captured by his voice and dance moves, and I recall committing myself to producing his music at no cost. After the concert, we made a contract that I would invest in his music career and in return he would give me 20% of the earnings he gets. In my mind, I never thought that eventually I would have an affair with him because he might as well have been my son. I wouldn't want my husband to know, and so I often tell him that I'm going for long business trips and use this moment to enjoy moments with my boy. I have rented him a house and I cater for his bills, and he promised never to cheat on me. He has plans to marry in future and I am okay with that, but we made a vow to never end our affair." End quote. Now, the next reason is I want to be in charge of the relationship, from a woman known as Caroline, who is a lawyer in her early 50s. She says, and I quote, "I am a divorcee and a mother of twins in their 30s. After 10 years of marriage, I have discovered that my husband has been having multiple affairs. A gut-wrenching and painful divorce followed later that left our daughters broken. I met my lover in his 20s 5 years ago through a mutual friend who knew of my painful divorce experience, and apparently she was also dating a young man. She often told me how her heart had been at peace since she started dating a 26-year-old man, and kept telling me that she doesn't care what people say or think of her dating a man who is half her age. At first, I never gave it a thought, but she kept on insisting, and with time, I gave it a try. Dating a younger man helps me hold on to the reins of my relationship within my hands. The man never questions what I do and is always there for me emotionally. He values my input in the relationship and he consults me for important advice regarding life. I'm okay with him having a future because mine is just having fun and enjoying life. We have an agreement that the relationship will not end even when he marries, but I will give him space when he is with his wife. Since my daughters are married, I stay alone, and so I often invite him to my house. It is never a big concern of what my neighbors think of me, but those who are close to me think I am mentoring the man in his career, as he is also a lawyer who I recruited to my law firm 2 years ago. So even when my daughters find him in the house, they think we're discussing legal matters. He earns twice the amount that other employees at his level earn. I have also mentored him, and I always refer him to clients, hence building his brand. I am glad to be his advisor and nurturer. I have had peace since I met him and would never imagine dating a man of my age." End quote. Now, last but not least, the reason is I am looking for emotional support. The lady is called Lydia and she's an entrepreneur in her early 40s. She says, and I quote, "I always long to have a deeper emotional connection with my husband, but it's been hard. I crave conversations and adoration, but my husband works long hours, leaving me with the kids. I have been patient all through, but it's been hard to bear this neglect. I felt lonely and isolated, and as a result, I started looking for someone to meet my unmet need, and at this point I landed on a 25-year-old man who I met at a restaurant I had visited for lunch. He's a chef and I enjoy the meal, and at some point I thought, who wouldn't mind waking up to a sumptuous breakfast in bed once in a while? We exchanged contacts and our friendship started growing. I fell in love with him so deeply that I couldn't imagine he was so much younger than me. I love the emotional attention he gives me, and I can't trade that with anything else. I never imagined I would date a younger man, but my desire for emotional support made me vulnerable. Currently, the man is not dating and we are enjoying every day as it comes. I wouldn't mind him settling down in marriage someday, but we have agreed to end the relationship as soon as he marries because I can't imagine sharing him with any other woman." End quote. And that is the end of the article. Now, before I get into what I think about this entire thing and my breakdown on it, let me first talk about the whole older women thing, because it is something that I have mentioned before, but I don't think I've ever gotten into it like deeply. Because if you do want to go for a cougar or a MILF, there are certain pros and cons to it, because it's not all bad and it's not all good. So the biggest pros is, one, they know what they want, unlike a lot of younger babes that are in like late teens, early 20s. So at least you won't fuss around as much. Also, there are a lot less maintenance. Hell, they might even maintain you, as has been the case in just about all of these stories, if not 3 of them. They nag you a lot less because they understand that you're a fully grown adult, and in some cases, they can even help uplift you. Now, when you look at the cons, the first and main con is you can't exactly have any long-term sort of relationship with this person. It's not like you're trying to get married to them. Hell, most cases you'll never hear them talking about wanting to marry you. They know very well that that sort of a relationship won't go very far. Then secondly, at times they can actually be pretty clingy. It's something that you also notice with a lot of sugar daddies. Like, they tend to have a clingy thing, especially if they're maintaining you. Third, they may be married, and that might mean that you're assisting them to cheat on their partner. Now, that one is entirely subjective on whether you think it's good or bad, but that's entirely up to you. Then fourth, your relationship can't be as public as you might like, so it's not like you can be walking around in a supermarket and you, a 22-year-old man, can suddenly decide to smack or grab the ass of your 45-year-old girlfriend and it'll look okay. Like, you're gonna get very different looks, especially from people who look at you and the first thing that clicks in their heads is that person is probably supposed to be like your mother or your aunt or some shit. But all that said and done, like, from all of these situations, there were a couple of things that I actually noticed which sort of stood out. In all 4 of the women's stories, there was some level of emotional satisfaction that the men were giving them. Then in about 3 out of the 4 cases, the women were married. And interestingly enough, all 4 of them were actually open to the idea of the younger man actually settling down and getting married in the future with someone else. The only difference is, in about 3 of those cases, they were all talking about continuing the relationship beyond it, such that they'd pretty much be cheating on their spouse with them, which seems a little bit weird. But that aside, I think the most noticeable thing for me, and I don't know, maybe other guys might notice this, maybe it was just me, maybe the babes might notice, is that out of all of those 4 women, there's only one woman who came out to actually state that she was trying to uplift this guy by building his name and his brand. Like, all the other babes were not doing anything of the sort. Even the babe that was banging the singer, she didn't talk about like properly uplifting his career per se. She says it started that way, but we don't know if they actually continued uplifting the boy toy or if that sort of went into the back burner while she was busy getting pipe from him. Although I would like to assume that she was still trying to help the guy. But all in all, it does kind of paint a couple of very interesting pictures. Like, considering that there was the whole Kenya National Bureau of Statistics report, which showed that like only 2.2% of women in that report were married and also cheating on their partners, it does seem a little bit weird that a lot of these older babes were actually cheating. But beyond that, it does actually paint a very interesting picture, because at least it shows that if you are interested in an older woman, then it is pretty possible for you to have some sort of a relationship with them. The interesting twist in all of this, even though I didn't actually mention it, but it was in the article, is that I think it was for 1, if not 2 of these ladies, they flat out stated that they wouldn't ever want their own sons to actually have some sort of a relationship with an older woman. And to some degree, I think they were kind of guilty about it, but they were still perfectly okay having that sort of a relationship because there was some sort of fulfillment that was there. Which kind of brings me towards the end of all this by talking about the idea of what exactly you're getting into that relationship for. Because I don't think if you're trying to get married that going for a much older woman is the best bet. There's lots of different breakdowns on this, and the Red Pill can talk about it, but honestly, if that's what you want to do, then you have to consider what it is that you're looking at if you're trying to go for some sort of long-term partnership. But if you are looking at something that's a little bit more short-term and is fairly casual or isn't particularly serious, then it is possible to have some sort of a relationship with a cougar or a MILF. Just saying. And to kind of conclude all of this, I just want to talk about someone who's famous for actually marrying someone that's much older than them. And that person is none other than France's current president, Emmanuel Macron. And I'm hoping I didn't butcher that too badly. Now, I did a bit of research on how him and his current wife, known as Brigitte Trogneux, who's 29 years older than him, I think, actually met. And apparently, she was his teacher back when he was in school. And the guy sort of had a crush on her and was always interested in her, blah, blah, blah. The woman ended up divorcing her husband and ended up being with him, blah, blah, blah. But that's sort of not the part that I'm trying to focus on. I'm trying to focus on the teacher part. Now, this guy was attracted to her because that was his high school teacher. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of high school boys who will watch porn that will have the fantasy setting of you banging the high school teacher or, the college lecturer or some shit. And that should probably tell you quite a bit about young guys and their liking for older women. Because at the end of the day, when you look at a lot of the likings of, the quote-unquote cougar, the quote-unquote MILF, I don't think most guys are attracted to them beyond on a sexual level. Because a lot of times you find that they have a more mature body than some of the younger babes, and you might end up being attracted to that. Maybe you might have mommy issues, or maybe you might be one of the outliers like Emmanuel Macron, who decided to, take his fantasy to a whole new level and actually get married to the teacher. But for most guys, if you are looking to date someone who's much older than you, then you do have to remember that at the end of the day, no matter how much you like this person, it's not really going to go beyond it being some sort of a casual or symbiotic relationship like a friends with benefits but on a slightly more serious level. Because at the end of the day, as you as a young person, if you do want to settle down and get married at some point, then you're probably going to want to look for someone younger. And while you can talk about how much you might like this person right now, at the end of the day, there's a 95% chance that you're probably just fulfilling some sort of cougar or MILF fantasy that you've always had. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this, and maybe there's more Emmanuel Macrons that are coming up in the future, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.